Hey guys, Jordan here. Today we're going to be diving into the AMD Radeon AI Pro R9700. Now we're not going to be looking at a gaming graphics card this time. The R9700 is a card that AMD have designed for AI acceleration and professional workloads, so let's break down what that means. Now I have the Sapphire version here, which is kindly sent out by Scan Computers UK. If you're not familiar with them, they're one of the leading UK retailers for computer components, pro audio video gear, even some musical instruments. I'll leave them down below if you want to check them out. Now the key specs for this, as far as I can tell, these are the same across the board. The R9700 features 4096 stream processors, a boost clock of 2920 MHz, 32GB of GDDR6 memory on a 256-bit bus that delivers 640GB of bandwidth. It's got 4 DisplayPort 2.1A ports and is priced around £1,300 at the time of filming. Now one thing that you might not expect is this card uses a 16-pin power connector instead of the triple 8 pins that we're used to seeing on AMD cards. Now thankfully Sapphire do include the adapter in the box, so should your power supply not have a native 16-pin cable, you're still covered. Quite a long one as well.
That's what she said.
Now while this isn't a gaming card, I still wanted to include a few familiar benchmarks to provide some context, but don't worry, I have got something pretty exciting for you to see at the end of this video instead. We'll be pitting this up against the 5090, but we also have two of these cards, so we'll be testing two of these R9700s together. Now first off, we'll check out how a single card performs in synthetic benchmarks, and then we'll also look at what happens when we double up. Now we tested the 5090 using driver version 610.63, while the AI cards were tested with version 26.5.2. Starting with 3D Mark Time Spy, the Sapphire card came in with a score of 25,931 points, just putting it slightly behind the RTX 4080 Super with 25,975. It also remained comfortably ahead of other cards such as the Inspire 5070 and also the Asus TUF 4070 Ti. Now for a card that isn't marketed as a gaming product, it's still a respectable result and also gives us a useful reference point against more traditional GPUs. Now moving over to still Nomad, the R9700 scored 7,087 points, putting it alongside the RTX 9070 XT, which was tested previously. Now once again, gaming isn't the primary focus, but it's interesting to see that the workstation-focused offering is still capable of delivering performance in line with many enthusiast gaming graphics cards. Now in Time Spy Extreme, ramping into 4K, we achieved 12,674, again placing it just behind the RTX 4080 Super and slightly below the RTX 7900 XT cards in the chart, while maintaining a healthy lead over cards such as the 4070 and 4070 Ti. Now something worth mentioning before we jump into the next set of results is these are new tests for the channel. Historically I've only ever used Geekbench, Blender and Cinebench for CPU reviews, so I don't have years of graphics card data to compare against, but because I was testing the 5090 Chunky alongside the AI Pro cards for DaVinci Resolve workloads, I decided it was the perfect opportunity to start building out some GPU productivity data as well. So for now you're only going to see the R9700 and 5090 in the charts, but moving forward I'll be including these tests in the future graphics card reviews as well. So in Geekbench 6, the card produced a score of 144,000 in OpenCL with a Vulkan score of 221,000. Now what's particularly interesting here is the sizable jump when moving from OpenCL to Vulkan, as the Vulkan results show considerably stronger performance. If your workflow makes use of Vulkan acceleration, there's clearly more performance available than the OpenCL figures alone might suggest. Then in Cinebench 2026 we saw a score of 50,651. While that trail was significantly behind the 5090 at a whopping 149,000 points, it's worth remembering that we're comparing this card against one of the fastest consumer graphics cards currently available. Blender showed a similar trend, the AI Pro achieving a score of 1,574 in Monster, 1,146 in Junk Shop and 823 in Classroom. Again, those figures sit well behind the 5090, but that gap isn't surprising given the software's long-standing optimization for NVIDIA hardware and CUDA acceleration. Now looking at efficiency in thermals, the AI Pro recorded a peak power draw of 479 watts from the wall, so placing it towards the lower half of the chart despite offering workstation class specifications and 32GB of VRAM. Then thermally, hotspot temperatures reached a high of 94, which gives a delta of 71.7 above ambient. That does place the card in the warmer side of our results, although it is worth remembering that Sapphire have opted for the blower style cooler rather than traditional open-end design. Obviously that benefits when using a professional workstation or multi-GPU environments, especially when they're sandwiched close together. Now, of course, AMD have designed this for professional workloads, so I did want to see how two of these would work and see if it did any meaningful improvement in our testing. So jumping into DaVinci Resolve here, I used my 9950X3D2 review, which was 13 minutes and 49 seconds, a 4K project, and then rendered it using the single AI card from Sapphire. That gives us a render time of 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Then adding the second card reduced that time down to 6 minutes and 25 seconds, so almost a good 2.5 minutes off the render time. Now, for reference, the 5090 did it in 3 minutes and 17 seconds, making it comfortably the fastest option tested. However, the dual R9700 configuration still demonstrated that these cards can scale really effectively when paired with software capable of utilising multiple GPUs. Now, looking at the time versus length multiplier gives us another useful perspective. The single card rendered the project at roughly 1.6 real time, while the dual card increased that to 2.2. The 5090 of course pushed that even further, reaching 4.2 times real time. And then of course power consumption during DaVinci rendering, the single card peaked at 497 watts, rising to 767 with both cards installed. And then by comparison, the RTX 5090 did 656. And one thing I will say is using two of these blower style cards together definitely makes their presence known. A single card produces a notable stream of hot air from the rear exhaust in a kind of a pulsing pattern, but with both of them it's almost continuous. So the acoustic profile does sound more like a traditional workstation than a gaming PC. Now, of course, it's worth remembering that we're only really scratching the surface here. One of the biggest challenges during testing was actually finding software that we could make meaningful use of both cards at the same time. As I mentioned, the synthetic benchmarks just either ignored the second card or just weren't designed for multi-GPU acceleration in the first place. So DaVinci Resolve Studio ended up being one of the few applications where we could actually clearly demonstrate the scaling, but thankfully the results were genuinely worthwhile. That's also why I wouldn't take these numbers as a final word on what these cards are capable of. But the good news is that's not the last time you're going to see them. As part of this little mini series I'm doing, I'll also be revisiting the 9700 in the upcoming Threadripper versus the 9950X3D2 video. So we'll be testing both the single and dual configurations alongside the 5090. So that should give us a much better idea where these cards fit into higher-end workstation builds and whether spending more on the platform hardware also makes sense for professional workloads. So for now though, I think AMD have created a genuinely interesting option for creative professionals. If you're working from home and need the absolute fastest, then the 5090 remains incredibly difficult to beat. However, the price is where things get interesting. At the time of filming, the Palette 5090 is £3,300. When I originally reviewed it, it was closest to £1,800. So the pricing has changed dramatically. And by comparison, you can get two AI Pros for around £2,600 combined. So that gives workstation users a level of flexibility that I think is really worth considering. You could start with a single card, get access to the full 32 gig of VRAM, and then add a second card later if your workloads demand it. Of course, it's not going to match the 5090 performance in every scenario, but it does create a more gradual upgrade path and also a lower cost of entry by far. And personally, I think that's one of the best features about this card, not necessarily the single card performance, but we've now got another route to scaling performance without immediately jumping to an eye-watering price of a flagship card. So is there anything else you'd like to know that I haven't covered? Please leave it down in the comment box below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget, we have got the Threadripper versus 9950X3D2 video coming up, so please get subscribed if you haven't already. Ding the bell so you don't miss that video. I'll leave all the links to the products you've seen in the video down below if you want to pick any up. Of course, a big thank you to Scan Computers for sending these out for me to look at. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.